only 20-some plus people. Okay? Then because in this valley here, you have these opportunities to have these people work together and fast. That's Taiwan has to learn, has to catch up with. So because they didn't have that, then we now see how popular we become. And, the team back in Italy, they've been sort of, how could we, miss it? Yes, I feel very sorry for that too. But that's just one of the examples, the challenges they're going to face. Okay? And then you have to know the market. Also, you have to contact with Nintendo, right? So the future actually could be very bright if we do things right. But that's true anywhere, anytime, for anything, right? So hopefully their political leadership is to maintain the peaceful Taiwan Strait. So don't bother, focus on R&D and economic development. And I was jokingly saying Taiwan had a cultural revolution because mainland China had one, so they have to have one. And so they had that one, caused so much trouble and at the cost of their downturn of their economy. For me, I think that's very dumb. But what can I say, right? And for a while, I don't even want to tell people I graduated from Taiwan University because I had a lousy president who graduated from Taiwan University. And you kept Taiwan's window of opportunity, in my assessment, is like 3 to 5 years. After 5 years, I think China will catch up relatively fast. So you add that one, says, well, maybe 6 to 10 years. Okay, that's probably the most. Advantage in the high-tech area and its globalization experience to complement with the China market potential. Nowadays, everybody rushes to China, try to capture the market. But you are just like 2 hours flight away. But you can't. Because nowadays, because of the political situation, anybody wants to go from Taiwan to China, you have to go through Hong Kong and Macau. It means 8 hours or more, whole day, for a 2-hour flight. I mean, that's, to me, it's totally stupidity. But that's the case. And then import talent all over the world. Because you cannot change grandparents spoil their kids. You can change parents spoil their kids. All right, so if you don't have all the talent, import it. Just like Silicon Valley, right? We import it all over the world. But you have to make it attractive. And politically, they will say they don't want to hire the people from mainland China. So why not, if they have it? I mean, the 2 hours flight, they're over. Okay? So that's, I would say, if they can do all that, Taiwan still has a very bright future because the infrastructure, the clusters they have near Hsinchu and central Taiwan, southern Taiwan even, the cluster is a very good environment for entrepreneurs because you don't have to do everything. And just like Silicon Valley, right? If you do something, look, there's a good machine shop to make that part, and there's a good software can do this and that. So you just do the integration if you have a good idea. Okay? So next, please. So therefore, I think the win-win situation is you take the advantages of all the 3 areas, combine them. You have internet to communicate, but mentally you should be able to accept all that and how to take advantage of it. So that's all I have. So thank you for your attention.
Bevan, thanks for a fantastic talk. Yeah, there's so many ways I'd like to follow this up with a lot of questions. I want to maybe start by asking you about the role of the expats, the people who were living overseas and who went back to Taiwan. Taiwan looked like it was really successful with a reverse brain drain in the mid-1990s, late 1990s. Have they lost that?
In a way, yes. The reason is, you see, It's a timing. The timing was right. And the government at that time sent out top-level government officers to the United States, go all over the town, and gathered all the expatriates and the Chinese here, talked to them, said, we need you, and you come back. We'll give you all these convenience, facilities, so you can do whatever you want. Then during that time, like a generation like me, already in the United States, 20 or 30, 40 years, okay? You worked in the big company and so forth, and if you went through the 50s, the 60s, all right, you knew how this country has been changed to today. And the glass ceiling in the big company is there, okay? So therefore, you look at this, okay, here I'm already bumping to the top, and yet here has given me all these goodies, and I come from there, why don't I go back? So they go. Now, you don't have this continuous generation people like that as a supply. So I would say it's not as good as in the past.
I think that may be a real interesting factor in kind of, if you talk about the hollowing out of Taiwan, you've seen so much of the economy flow into mainland, flow west. You're seeing kind of the expats not really going back to Taiwan like this. This is probably the most critical thing right now.
Right.
But it's interesting to look at a more open sort of economic system. If you say that borders become irrelevant and what you have are regional or local clusters, then Taiwan really does have some incredible, accumulations of knowledge, not just codified stuff, but knowledge around the semiconductor industry, around the optoelectronic industry.
Yeah. You see, look at the TSMC, okay? Then you look at the UMC, all right? The world foundry world, TSMC is number 1. UMC is number 2. But if you look at the revenue, okay, the UMC is almost like 1/3 of TSMC. Why? Okay. Because Morris is a long time TI executive vice president. And he manages that place differently. And also, after all these years, they have a lot of experience how to handle that. So UMC wants to catch up. Even locally, right there, you can't catch up that fast. And the other foundries in the world have a long time to catch up. Therefore, they have that advantage, the knowledge. Yes.
Okay, let's open up the floor. In the back.
So, one of the things that has, increased the competitive advantage of Taiwanese, IC companies has been the use of stock. Okay, so for example, I typically.
I'm sorry, you said the use of
stock.
Stock.
Not so much stock option, but stock grant.
Yeah.
So I know at MediaTek, they, a typical IC design manager, you get paid about $30,000 per year, but the stock grant could be worth $100,000. And the reason they did that was because, they didn't have to expense stock at the time. But now the government regulation has changed that, and then companies have to expense stock. How do you say that affect the competitiveness of Taiwanese IC companies?
It does have an effect. So therefore, you see, the government changes the rule. Sometimes, like the Taiwanese saying, you are carrying a big stone, then you let it go and head on your 2 feet. All right. So in that way, it's going to have some effect. And otherwise, you won't have this 100-some plus managers or staff member went over to the mainland China from TSMC, right? So they are losing people that way too, and it is some concern. So, but on the other hand, if you want to catch up with, say, U.S. and the stock-wise, some of those rules you do need. Otherwise, you are too nice, too good to be true. Yeah.
Okay. You had a question.
Can you talk a bit more about the contrast in the Asian entrepreneurship, say, between Japan, Taiwan, and China. You mentioned at one point that you characterized China as two straits or two boundaries, three peoples: Hong Kong, Taiwanese, mainland Chinese. And maybe can you add in what you think about Japan and its opportunities in entrepreneurship moving forward?
Japan is like this. Their culture restricted them in such a way. They don't want to be different. Even they think different, they have to appear to be think the same, behave the same. Then they also have a tradition is to go into the big company and work, have some loyalty into the company. And therefore, entrepreneur to start up, you need far more courage than they are in China or in Taiwan. This is my personal observation. For example, when I was in Japan there, I mean, at 7 o'clock, they don't go home. I said, how come? Well, because the manager didn't go home. So they will not go home. All right? And then after your manager go, they go together with the manager. Then go to the beer drinking place. And then until 11 o'clock. Then they catch the last train, go home. The next day, early get in the morning and come into Tokyo again and to work. Boy, that's a very miserable life. But they have their advantages. In the beer hall, you can let your hair down, say anything you want. So management issues can be resolved that way because next day nobody remembers anything. So you live in that kind of environment. You do not wish to risk too much. Then the entrepreneur is hard to start. But now it's getting much better. But the inertia is there. The stability of a society is there. The good thing is they have a very nice, stable living condition. So you lose something, but you gain something in that way. Now, in China, it's like in the Wild West situation right now. And anything goes if you don't get caught. Okay? So in Taiwan, is because of that president, it causes so much trouble. They tied one hand behind the back. It's difficult. And hopefully the next president will do better. If that's the case, we'll facilitate them to do that. Then Taiwan still has a lot of energy, activity for the entrepreneur to move around. So I would, for the short time being, like I would say 5 years, 3-5 years period, I think the Taiwan entrepreneur still has a little bit edge. And the mainland China one also has, but because they have more opportunity and more playground than the Taiwan. The Taiwan entrepreneurs went into mainland China. Sometimes they got ate up by the local mainland China people. So that's the danger. So they have to be really smart and fast on feet. So I think basically the same, but behave differently, depends on time. So I think Japan is still way behind to catch up.
Bevan, I really liked your point about Taiwanese entrepreneurs focusing on getting to an opportunity before anybody else, right, and maybe not so much creating a huge, big new opportunity. Right. I wonder, do you see that kind of situation just because China is such a bigger market that the local people kind of have bigger opportunities that are easier to get to, or?
Yes. Yeah.
So basically, you would kind of put the mentality in this spot.
In that spot, right.
Uh-huh.
Is there a level of trust between the Taiwanese investors and the Chinese if there's a Cayman Islands corporation that's uniting them?
Well, I think that the trust in business is a, what do you call, oxymoron? I mean, you know, in Silicon Valley, what the situation is, you know, I was last emperor of my company, and I was killed by a big company because I don't have money to hire expensive lawyer to claim the money they owe me. So, so what can you say about that? So that depends on how you establish it and whom you know. So the person to person is very important, either Japan or China or Taiwan. But that's a double-edged sword. Person to person relationship help you, but also do damage to you because of person to person relationship, sometimes you ignore certain rules that get you into trouble. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Excellent point.
With Taiwanese graduates?
You want to know the real answer or you want to know official answer? Okay. Official answer would say, of course, you go back to Taiwan to work for your country. The unofficial answer is say, well, you take a look. If the U.S. actually, even Silicon Valley, still short of talent, and you are a graduate here, you are a talent, I would recommend you work here and establish your network here. Then you can bring it back either to Taiwan or to China. Then, of course, another option is you direct it to China. However, there's a lot of mainland China graduates from here. They already know that place better than you do, probably, if you're not from there. Then you're at a little bit disadvantage. So I think you have to make that choice.
So case by case, you
Case
look
by
at what you have that's a competitive advantage and where your opportunities
Oh, yeah.
are.
That's the business school's experts that tell you, differentiate your advantage. Huh? Okay. Yes.
That even though the Taiwanese, the Chinese, and the people from Hong Kong speak the same language and think the same way, they behave differently. In what ways exactly do they behave differently?
Oh, all right. The Hong Kong people, I'll give you one example. Hong Kong has few, you call top-tier universities. There's one university called Hong Kong University. But there's also one is trying to compete with MIT, is a technology institute. And I have quite a few friends being their deans and so forth over there and talk to me like this. Most of the Hong Kong people want to go to the Hong Kong University. Why? Because the graduates there, the network is getting into the business. So Hong Kong people behave mostly business first. Okay. Technical and other things, well, that's secondary. So the Taiwanese there, they want both. They want both this and that, and the only trouble is those laws and the conditions constrain them somewhat. In the mainland China, is they wanted everything, and then the law has not well established. As long as they know they have the relationship, they have the ties, they can almost do anything. On the other hand, if you don't, you got caught. So the behavior is formed by the environment and the laws and the situation they operate in. As far as understanding, language and all that, not that much difference.
So the goals may be very similar, but the path you would take to get to your goals may be a bit different.
Exactly, yes.
I wanted to ask you about the role of government money. A lot of the large Taiwanese companies had very sweet government contracts near the beginnings of their existence. I'm thinking about Etron, that is run by Dr. Nikki Liu, who's a Stanford grad. And they were really, their first big business was like a $300 million U.S. chip design deal that was more or less government money. Would you say that the government money really did a great deal in the glory days to build up Taiwan's kind of entrepreneurial community? And if so, how do you contrast that to Singapore?
Well, the Taiwan money, percentage-wise, given to the entrepreneurs, probably is not as great percentage-wise as in Singapore.
Okay.